guys, what's going on? Coach Indy here. Welcome back to another episode of the Premier League Appetiser show. Haven't subscribed to the channel already, please click the notification bell right now. You'll get all the content on the Asian one-to-one football coaching channel. It won't just be appetizer shows, it'll be podcasts, there's going to be coaching content, there's going to be all sorts of things coming your way. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about some other news, things that have made the news for good or for bad throughout the week since last week. Some interesting topics there. We'll run through game week 6 results, then we'll look ahead to game week 7 fixtures, some mouth-watering fixtures there as well. We'll touch on some European fixtures as well, and then we'll round up with Indy versus the rest of the world, in which the contrast to last week's results couldn't be any bigger. Okay, we'll move on to other news to start with. So first thing I want to discuss is the pay-per-view games. So obviously there's been a lot of negative press with the payment, the cost you have to pay for a pay-per-view game. It's £14.95. Obviously, myself as a fan, I don't want to pay £14.95 for an extra game to watch my team, Man United, and nor do other teams as well. You know, if it's a Leeds United fan, Brighton fan, wherever it may be, you don't want to pay the extra cash. So there was a Premier League shareholders meeting on Monday. There was loads of things discussed, and that was one of the discussions, one of the topics of discussion, should I say, on the Monday. Now, I will say nothing has materialised other than the fixtures for pay-per-view will continue up until the next international break, which effectively is 2 more rounds of Premier League games. So whether they continue that after international break or not, who knows? I'm sure we'll find out in the coming days and weeks. Moving on quite nicely to obviously the negative press about the pay-per-view games as well. A lot of fans have been boycotting the pay-per-view games because it's not cost effective, and they don't think it's the right sort of fee to pay for another game. I mean, in my opinion, maybe £4.95 would be more acceptable, around the £5 mark, or a package of £11.99 for the month or something like that, which seems more reasonable than £14.95 per game. So yeah, a lot of fans have been boycotting the games, and instead they've actually raised £300,000 and donated it all to charity. So that's a mixture of fans from all the Premier League clubs. It's not just one club or whatever. So that's fair play to the fans. If that's what they want to do, then I don't blame them. And you know, if they want to spend their money, their hard-earned cash another way, then they're entitled to do so. Burnley have been made the news as well. They've sort of been involved. I think it'd be best to sort of just rewind a little bit back to sort of Project Restart and the build up towards that period as well. I mean, everyone knew there was a lot of players going out of contract for Burnley in the sort of the summer window, and a lot of them players weren't. The contracts weren't renewed, so therefore they were going to be losing some players, and obviously therefore the squad would have been thinner and less competition within the squad. Now, whether that was just at the time, a lot of people were thinking, what's going on here? Is it the board versus Sean Dyche? They're not backing him, etc. You know, especially what sort of outstanding job he's done. However, some news have sort of come to fruition the last sort of week or two, especially this week, is that there could be a possible takeover at Burnley from an Arab consortium worth, well, I'm not sure his worth, but the club that he wants to purchase Burnley for about £200 million, which is a healthy amount of money. I believe it was the same guy who tried to purchase Newcastle United. So maybe that might make sense, rewinding back to Project Restart and why the reasons why the current owner didn't want to invest into the club, because he knew he was going to be selling. So what's the point of investing all that money, knowing full well a few months later on you could be selling? So maybe put 2 and 2 together, that could have been a reason why. Definitely will be exciting times for Burnley ahead if this does materialise, and I will say it's a big if. You know, Newcastle fans were getting excited as well, and nothing did materialise. So you never know in this instance as well. Obviously there'll be various sort of checks that the potential new owner will have to do. You know, the fit and proper tests, proof of funds, all them kind of things will have to be proven, all them kind of things, you know. And then last thing I just want to touch on is, we touched on Project Big Picture and European Premier League last week. Nothing further has materialised over the last sort of 7 days. It's still an ongoing matter, but obviously watch your space, and I will keep you guys up to date with what's going on in terms of both of those situations. Just going to really sort of touch on the European games. So been another good week for the Premier League clubs, both in the Champions League and in the Europa League. 4 teams involved in the Champions League: Man United, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. Sorry, all of those won their games in the Champions League. All of them won it with a goal. Sorry, without conceding a goal. Man United 5-0, Man City 3-0, Chelsea 4-0, and Liverpool 2-0. And then Europa League, still decent results there as well. Arsenal won their game 3-0, Leicester won their game 2-1, and then Spurs were the only team not to pick up a W. They actually lost at Antwerp 1-0. So generally speaking, a lot of confidence amongst the English clubs sort of in the European competitions, and obviously going into the Premier League, that's going to help them sort of build more momentum going forward. Okay, we're just going to go move on to game week 6 results. Now there was obviously some interesting results, sort of more, I would say, more authentic, more original, more predictable results, if you like. This sort of game week 6 just gone by, no sort of obscure and irregular sort of results, I would say, the scorelines. Let's run through those. So the early kick-off, so the first kick-off on the Friday night was Aston Villa versus Leeds. I'll probably say this was, you could argue, maybe the shock of the week, you could argue. So finished Aston Villa 0, Leeds 3. Patrick Bamford scored a hat-trick. I think a lot of people would have had Villa to win this game. Certainly picking up a point, considering the start they made. Pick up a lot of W's and be in and amongst the top of the league. I think they had won 4 out of 4 before this game, and if they won the game, they would have gone top of the league going into the weekend's fixtures, and they could, relax, enjoy the sort of the other games in the league that are happening. Knowing full well they're top of the league for at least 24 hours, possibly 48 hours. It wasn't to be there, and Bamford sort of tore it up a little bit, and Leeds were actually really impressive. I don't want to just talk about Patrick Bamford. Obviously, he's going to get all the headlines, but it was, the whole team was a collective. Alioski come in, Calvin Phillips wasn't available, so that was another reason why you think Villa would win. But the team just, they played 3 at the back with wing backs, and Harrison and Costa sort of supporting Bamford as well. Everything sort of, the synergy within the team was really, really good. Lots of rhythm in the team. Never stopped, never lacked in energy, and thoroughly deserved the win, if I'm totally honest. Moving on to Saturday's games, amid West Ham versus Manchester City. This finished 1-1. West Ham took the lead in the first half. Antonio scoring again, no other than Mikel Antonio, who else scores for West Ham these days, what it seems like anyway. So he scored an overhead kick, a decent overhead kick as well from a Kufel cross. And then in the second half, Foden actually came on at half time. Within 6 minutes he equalised, and you thought at that point there Man City would go on and either nick the win or go and win it comfortably, but it wasn't the case. They couldn't break them down. I mean, De Bruyne come on. I wouldn't say he was ineffective, because he was effective, but he just couldn't provide the key moments and the key contributions to help his team pick up that W. So fair play to West Ham. It was a hard fought point, and they've turned things around since their sort of back-to-back defeats at the beginning of the season. Moving on to the 3 o'clock game, the only 3 o'clock game, should I say. Fulham versus Crystal Palace. This finished Fulham 1, Crystal Palace 2. Zaha, goal and assist for him. Riedewald also scored, and there's a late consolation for Fulham. It's looking really, really dire for Fulham. I know it's only 5 or 6 games into the season, guys, but it's looking really... I mean, these are types of games that if they've got any chance at home to, I suppose, rival, if you like, although Palace have done really well this so far in the season, you expect them to pick up a minimum point, but not ideally a W. And obviously it would be their first points of the season, but it's not the case. Lost at home again. Less said about Fulham the better, I think, and they just need to pick it up really. Scott Parker and his coaching staff really need to get into them, and whether it be on the training field, or whether it be tactics, whether it be motivation, whether it be psychological, it could be all the above, to be honest with you guys. Then the first of the evening game, so we had Manchester United versus Chelsea. This was 0-0. I believe this was the first 0-0 of the season. Correct me if I'm wrong, leave a little comment as well, guys. If there was another 0-0 in the Premier League this season, let me know. I will apologise, but I think that was the first 0-0. A very cagey and cautious affair from both teams, from both managers. I think it probably says more about both teams' defensive vulnerabilities more so than their attacking qualities. Obviously Chelsea scored plenty going forward, but they've conceded lots of goals, and similar to Man United. So I think it was more so quite a cagey game. United probably had the best of the chances, Rashford having 1v1 in the first half, which he could have done slightly better on. Having said that, there wasn't much more else in the game really. I think one thing I do want to know about Chelsea is that since the new lad, the goalkeeper Edward Mendy's come in, he's played 5 games and kept 4 clean sheets, and they've drawn the other game. I think they might have, they've drawn the other game, so they've kept 4 clean sheets out of 5, basically, what I'm trying to say. And that's the same statistic as Petr Cech when he came into Chelsea from Rennes as well, which is incidentally where Mendy came from as well. So is that just a little omen for you? I don't know, but obviously that's helped defensively. On top of Chilwell being fitter and Thiago Silva and all these other players playing, so I don't want to just say it's down to him. But 0-0 nevertheless. Then you had the late game, Liverpool versus Sheffield. Finished 2-1 to Liverpool. Could have been a lot more for Liverpool. Ramsdale made a couple of good saves. There was a goal disallowed for VAR for Liverpool. Liverpool at the post. Also, Sheffield United's goal probably shouldn't have been. It was scored from a penalty from Sander Berge, but in my opinion, it looked like the incident was actually outside the box. So it shouldn't have been a penalty, but obviously, nevertheless, the decision's been given and he's dispatched a penalty. Liverpool back onto sort of winning ways, if you like. And hopefully they can build on some more momentum for their sort of case, not for my case being a Man United fan. Moving on to Sunday games, you had Southampton 2, Everton 0. This was probably a bit of a shock as well. Obviously Everton are missing some players with Richarlison. They got Luca Digne sent off in this game as well. James Rodriguez was a doubt for this game. He did play, but then he's could be a doubt for the next game with some muscle fatigue, I think. DCL was pretty much non-existent. Che Adams and Ward-Prowse scored the goals for Southampton, so it's a good 2-0 win for them. And after a slow start for Southampton, losing their first 2 games, the next 4 games they've won 3 and drawn 1, so they're unbeaten. A nice sort of mini run, if you like. Then you got Wolves versus Newcastle. This finished 1-1. Raul Jimenez scored again for Wolves. It's 3 games in a row. Absolutely flying at the moment. So he scored 8 on the 80th minute. You expect Wolves to see out the game, especially how good they are defensively as a unit. And also individually. However, I think Jacob Murphy, the Newcastle winger who played as a wing back in this game, actually scored a free kick. Now you could argue it was a fault of the goalkeeper in terms of placement of the ball and the quantity of people in the wall, but also his commitment to the save as well. I think he was a bit slow going down and didn't really commit to making the save. I think he maybe thought he was going to get injured clattering into the post. But decent point for Newcastle away from home, 1-1. Move on to the next game. Disappointing from Wolves' point of view. Then we had Arsenal versus Leicester. It's a late game on the Sunday. This finished Arsenal 0, Leicester 1. Have a guess, guys, who scored? You guessed it, Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy seems to just always score against Arsenal. Jamie Vardy's having a party, as they say. So he scored against Arsenal. I think it was about 10 minutes to go. They played quite similar, Leicester, to how they played against Manchester City away from home. Sort of plenty of bodies behind the ball, defending a sort of a 5-4-1 formation, if you like. Brought Vardy on later on in the game. Didn't actually start the game. I think Harvey Barnes started up front. And then soaked up the pressure and hit them on the counter. I think that was exactly the game plan they had against Manchester City, and it worked for them. So fair play to Rodgers, recognising what strategy and what plan can work for his squad, and also nullify the opposition's threats as well. So that's good managerial and tactical nous from Brendan Rodgers. So it's a good win for Leicester City. We move on to the Monday night games. First in which was Brighton versus West Brom. This finished 1-1. Didn't see the game, so I can't comment about it too much. All I know is Livermore scored an own goal, gave Brighton the lead 1-0, and then a late goal from Kylan Grant made it 1-1 with about 10 minutes to go. It's a decent point for West Brom, so they've played 6, lost 3 and drawn 3, so maybe they're more difficult to beat than people are giving them credit for. And maybe they're also finding their range and their form and stability within the squad. And then the last game to round off game week 6 was Burnley versus Tottenham. Now Burnley have only had 1 point this season. Prior to this game they've played 4 games and 3 of them away from home, so that obviously plays a part in terms of their league position. This finished 1-0 to Spurs. Again, it was a combination between Kane and Son, whether it be Kane scoring or Son scoring, and vice versa in terms of assists. In this case it was Kane with the assist and Sonny with the header. 15 minutes to go and they saw out the game. It could have been a much different game in terms of, it's just margins. Sean Dyche always talks about margins, being on the right side of the margins, and you could argue in this case his team was on the wrong side of the margins, because it was I mean, you could argue it was good movement from Son because it's second phase from a set piece, recognising it was an outswinger, so the most likely position to be in is the position he found himself in to finish the header. But also, it wasn't the best of corners, and I think Kane's improvised sort of flicked it on, and it wasn't in what they would have practiced, I would suggest, in training leading up to this game, that's how we're going to score from a set piece. Nevertheless, you know, you only can do what's put in front of you. However the cross comes in, you adapt and you improvise and do your best. And to be fair to Spurs, they capitalised on that, and I think that moves them into the top four. So all in all, a decent start for Spurs going into the 2021 season. We'll move on to game week 7 fixtures, and there is obviously some mouth-watering fixtures here as well. First of all, there was a Friday night game. We have Wolves versus Crystal Palace. A lot of people across social media and across sort of the footballing community, across Wolves and Crystal Palace, they all believe this is going to be a 0-0. I can see it being a 0-0. However, I won't spoil my Indy versus West World prediction just yet. However, I won't be going for 0-0. So yeah, I can understand that being a 0-0. So it'll be a good game. I think some exciting and some tricky players. You've got Troy, obviously been coming off of the bench, and then you've got Zaha, who's in blistering form at the moment. And obviously both teams relatively strong defensively. Moving into the Saturday games then, so we've got Sheffield versus Manchester City. That's the 12:30 game. Obviously Sheffield United have only picked up a point, I believe, this season. It might actually be 0, guys. Let me know in the comments if I'm right or wrong. I think maximum they picked up a point. And they might have only scored 1 goal as well. Obviously they need to turn things around. This fixture last season was a tight win for Manchester City. I think it'll be relatively tight again. Obviously City missing Aguero, picked up a hamstring injury in the last game. Obviously Jesus is not fit. They're obviously missing attacking personnel to sort of, you know, have the nous and the clinicalness they need in that final third. So this will be a tight game. I did hear some comments from Chris Wilder sort of leading into the game. He said he doesn't believe there's that much difference between the performance from the first batch of games they had beginning of last season to the first batch of games they've had to this stage of the season. It's just fine margins. It's not like it's a 20% drop off this season. He doesn't believe that's the case. He thinks it's only we didn't say a number, but he doesn't think there's a huge amount of difference between the last year's sort of batch of games and this year's batch of games. It probably goes back to what I was saying about Sean Dyche being on the wrong side or the right side of the margins. You know, it's such fine margins in the Premier League, such an unforgiving league as well. Burnley versus Chelsea is the 3 Cup game on the Saturday. And this fixture last season, I believe, it finished 4-2 to Chelsea, and Pulisic scored a hat-trick. I can't see that happening again of being 4-2 and Pulisic scored a hat-trick. However, I can see Chelsea winning this game, but it'll be difficult because Burnley always make it difficult for any team, whether it be home or away, because Sean Dyche has his team well organised, well structured, well drilled, understanding everyone's roles and responsibilities, and obviously taking accountability for their actions within the game environment. Then we have Liverpool versus West Ham. That is a 5:30 game. Obviously, Liverpool won their game midweek against Ajax 2-0. West Ham, decent point against Manchester City last weekend. You expect Liverpool to win this game. However, there is injury concerns and doubts everywhere across the pitch. Obviously, everyone knows about Van Dijk. Obviously, he's out for most of the season. Fabinho has been playing centre half along with Gomez because Matip's been injured. Fabinho got injured in the midweek game, so he's probably going to be missing this game. Whether they stick in a youngster or they put Jordan Henderson or as a centre half, I don't know. And also you've got Thiago possibly out, you've got Salah possibly out as well for injury. And obviously West Ham side of things, they might have Antonio out, but they might have Haller in. It just depends how Moyes sees it really. But it'll be a good game, it'll be a tough game. Moving on to the Sunday's games, then we have Aston Villa versus Southampton is the 12 o'clock game. Excuse me again. It's going to be quite a good game actually. You've got sort of two teams in form, especially going forwards, but even defensively. I know Villa had their sort of mini lapse in the last game at home to Leeds. But generally speaking, obviously had a pretty good season up to this point, and like I touched on Southampton earlier, they've bounced back after their sort of first 2 games, picking up 2 L's. And you obviously got strikers in form both ways. You've got Grealish, you've got Barkley in midfield, you've got Watkins scoring goals. On the other side, you've got Ings and Che Adams and and Ward-Prowse contributing as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite a good game. I reckon one of the games of the weekend. It could potentially be one of those. Newcastle versus Everton then is the 2 o'clock game. Both teams are sort of missing. We'll have some players missing. Richarlison and Digne have not just touched on there through suspension. Newcastle, they had so many central midfielders injured last game. Whether they have any of them back, I don't know. They played like 6 wingers last game, and also defensively as well. They're not quite 100% there as well. So this game will be an interesting game. I can see maybe being a tight game, maybe a 1-0 to someone. Then probably the most mouth-watering fixture, and arguably the most mouth-watering fixture in Premier League history, Man United versus Arsenal is a 4:30 game on Sky Sports. Both teams obviously had a good win midweek. Players being rested for both teams. Arsenal, I'd probably suggest they rested at least 9 players, possibly 10 or 11 as well, depending what you think the lineup could be against United. And United obviously rested Bruno and Rashford. They both come on and obviously contributed in that respect. And generally speaking, Man United have sort of maybe turned a corner in terms of the results since the last international break, and Arsenal have been a little bit indifferent, but have still been looking pretty good on the eye. So I expect this to be a good game. Then the late game on Sunday, Spurs versus Brighton. I think it's going to be a lot of goals in this game. Spurs obviously have Kane and Son in terrific form, in midfield looking strong and stable, with Højbjerg and Sissoko in there. And then with Brighton, they've obviously underground Potter play a lovely brand of football, a nice sort of passing style. They like to play between the thirds and through the thirds, and they've got lots of technical players, along with obviously the likes of is it Basuma, that plays centre midfield. He obviously can break up play and you know, win the ball back for the more technical players, if you like. So I think it's been quite an open game. It could be end to end as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that game actually. Moving on to Monday, then we have Fulham versus West Brom. It's a 5:30 game. You could argue already at this point this series, certainly from Fulham's point of view, because they've yet to get off the mark, maybe even a must-win game. Like, obviously 2 teams that come up from the champ as well. Just can you stick one on the other opposition for later in the season as well, pick up a dub. I mean, from West Brom's point of view, if they can really pick up a W here, that's really going to, you know, just sort of confirm in their head that they're maybe a better team, that they've left a blow on a possible rival, you know, in amongst sort of the relegation zone. And just from Fulham's point of view, they just need to get up and running. They need a W. So yeah, I think there'll be ebbing and flowing this game, back and forth. That's what I think the game will go. Whether it does, I don't know. And then another mouth-watering game, Leeds versus Leicester, is the 8 o'clock game on Monday night. You've got 2 teams that are very progressive, very attacking, lots of energy. Both teams have got some players injured, having said that, so it might not be as a sexy game, if you like, in terms of the personnel available and what qualities they can bring to the game. However, I can still see it being a quite a ebbing and flowing type of game. Lots of energy, lots of high tempo, quite frenetic kind of game. Will Leeds be able to back up their performance from last week? And Leicester, can they continue from their masterclass performance against sort of Arsenal last season, and then on the back of that picking up another win, this time in the away in the Europa League? So that'll be another tricky game for them, a 3rd away game in a week. Can they make it a hat-trick of away wins? Only time will tell. So guys, those are the fixtures for game week 7. Obviously we revealed the predictions of those from Indy versus Rest of the World next week. What we'll do is we'll run through the Indy versus Rest of the World results from game week 6. So just cast your minds back to last week. The scores finished up after myself against Stan, who was playing against Rest of the World. I was on 57, Rest of the World are on 63, so they've got a 6-point cushion. And then this week I was playing against another friend of mine. His name is JB. He's a Liverpool fan. And like I touched on at the beginning of the show, guys, it was a complete contrast in terms of the results. Sorry, it was a complete contrast to last week's results. So last week, between myself and Stan, we scored 33 points. This week was complete contrast. It was completely opposite side of the spectrum. Sorry. So we'll run through them. So myself, I went for a Villa win 3-1. That was 3-0 to Leeds. I went for Man City to win 3-1. That was obviously 1-1. Again, 0 points. Fulham Palace to be 2-2. This finished 2-1 to Palace. Again, 0. Not a great start from me, really, is it? Man United vs Chelsea. I went for a Desmond in this one. It was 0-0, so I have at least picked up 2 points. Liverpool versus Sheffield, went for an emphatic Liverpool win, went for 4-0. It was only 2-1, so another 2 points. Southampton Everton, I went for a Desmond, finished 2-0 to Southampton. Wolves versus Newcastle, I went for a 2-1 Wolves win, it finished obviously 1-1. Arsenal versus Leicester, I went for Arsenal to edge it 2-1, it finished 1-0 to Leicester. Brighton versus West Brom, I went for a 3-1 Brighton win, finished 1-1. And then Burnley versus Spurs, I went for a 3-1 Spurs win, and it finished 1-0. So that left me with 6 points. So that's my lowest score of the season so far. Regards to JB then, what did he do? So he went for a Villa 2-1 win, obviously 1-1, so 3-0 to Leeds, so 0 points there. West Ham versus Man City, he also went for a 3-1 Man City, 0 points there. He went for a Fulham 0, Palace 1, so he picked up 2 points there, obviously it's 2-1 to Palace. He also went for a Desmond in the Man United Chelsea game, 2-2, picks up another 2 there. He went for Leeds to beat Sheffield, him being a Liverpool, Liverpool to beat Sheffield, 3-0, and it finished 2-1, so picks up another 2 points there, sorry. Southampton versus Everton, went for a 1-1 draw, finished 2-0 to Southampton. Wolves versus Newcastle, went for a 2-0 Wolves win there, so nothing there. Arsenal versus Leicester, went for a 2-0 win to Arsenal, so nothing there. Brighton versus West Brom, went for a 2-1 win, again 0 points there. And then Burnley versus Spurs, he went for a 2-1 win to Spurs, so he picks up 2. So if you're working the scores as you're going along there, JB finished, representing the rest of the world, finished on 8 points. So this week's scores were Indy 6 points, rest of the world, and JB 8. So that brings the cumulative scores to Indy 63 for the season and the rest of the world on 71. So there's an 8 point cushion after 6 game weeks, sorry. There's an 8 point cushion. So I've got some work to do. I don't want the rest of the world to go too far ahead. I need to pull it back. However, there is lots and lots of game weeks to go. So we'll obviously have a different guest on next week in terms of predicting the results, and we'll run through those next week. That actually brings a conclusion to another episode 7 of the 2021 season on the Premier League Appetiser Show. I've been Coach Indy. Peace out, and we'll see everyone next week.